To our sixth edition of Gridiron Glory. I'm Alexander Cook along with Cole Wolfgang. This is a special edition to commemorate the World Series, and what a game it was last night. Game 7, both teams tied at 3-3. The Cubs on a 2-game winning streak, trying to make a huge comeback, and they did, Cole. They ended up winning 8-7 last night in a thriller. And if you've ever heard the curse of the Billy Goats, when this guy who owned this cafe, the Billy Goat Cafe, brought his pet Billy Goat into the stands at Wrigley Field. But since the Billy Goat was too smelly, they asked them to leave. And then the man said that the Cubs would never win a World Series again. And there are several other minor curses of the Cubs. But the Cubs overcame that last night. They win a World Series, and pretty big, Cole. Can you tell us the innings scores now?
Yeah, it was a close game the whole time. Very exciting. So in the first inning, Chicago scored 1 run. Second inning, neither team scored any runs. Third inning, Cleveland scored 1 run. Fourth inning, Chicago scored 2 runs. Fifth inning, 2 points each. The sixth inning, Chicago scored 1. Seventh, neither team scored. Eighth, Cleveland scored 3 unanswered, which tied the game up. And then 9, nobody scored. And then in the overtime inning, Chicago scored 2, and Cleveland only scored 1, which led Chicago to win 8-7.
That one was one for the ages, Cole, and a great way to wrap up a fantastic World Series. And have you ever heard how the Cubs have been called the lovable losers? No longer a loser, Cole. And
Nope, it's sure not.
Certainly not. And let's take a look at our scores from the earlier games. Start with World Series Game 1. The Indians blew out the Cubs 6-0. Then Game 2, the Cubs blew out the Indians in return 5-1. Then a very low-scoring game. The Indians beat the Cubs by 1-0. And then we have the Indians once again blowing out the Cubs 7-2. And if the Indians won one more game, then they would have won the series. Instead, you see the Cubs getting a close win over the Indians in Game 5, winning 3-2. And then the Cubs blowing out the Indians the night before last, 9-3. And then last night, one to remember, a Game 7 with all the adrenaline rush. And it was quite a game. 8-7 Cubs, your final score, as Chicago welcomes back the World Series Cubs. And we haven't said that in a very long time. 108 years, Cole. Let's shift our focus now to college football tonight. Since it's a Thursday night, might as well give you our college football predictions. First up, not exactly the top game, to say the least. Oklahoma taking on Iowa State. And if you knew that Iowa State's 1-7 and 0-5 in the Big 12, then you would know that they're going to lose. And if you knew that Oklahoma was 6-2, 5-0 in the Big 12, and number 14, I'm sure Oklahoma will win. What about you, Cole?
I agree. I think Oklahoma will easily take care of the 1-7 Iowa State. This game is not going to be close ever.
No way, and I don't know how it could go any way besides a blowout. Now let's take a look at UCLA, 3-5, 1-4 in the Pac-12. And they're actually a decent team, you have to admit, but the record doesn't show it. Playing Colorado on the road in Buffalo. And Colorado right now, number 15 in the nation, 6-2, and 4-1 in the Pac-12. I've got Colorado, and I think it's going to be a sizable one, but I don't necessarily think it's a blowout.
I got Colorado too. I mean, they were looking great this year. UCLA really isn't producing like the preseason expectations, and that's why I have Colorado winning.
Absolutely. And now let's take a look at Thursday Night Football. You can find that on the NFL Network only. It's the Falcons taking on the Bucks. And Cole, hasn't it seemed like Thursday Night Football has just been pretty much terrible?
Yeah, I think they maybe just use that to get rid of some of the bad games so they have more airtime for the better ones.
And also to attract more viewership on the NFL Network, but at least put a decent game on there instead of this, what should be a blowout. I assume the Falcons will take care of the Bucks on the road.
I have the Falcons winning by a few touchdowns. I think the Matt Ryan, Julio Jones chemistry is so good. That itself will take care of Tampa Bay.
Absolutely, and they have no defense. I'm starting to get tired of the Thursday Night Football, quite frankly. Just awful games, and to have to watch that Oklahoma game or that game, it's a hard choice. But football's football, Cole.
Yeah, football, definitely. Any football is football. Some games just not as important, but they're still all football, so.
Absolutely. And while we're on it, let's just preview the games to watch this weekend. We're going to have, this one, and you're going to love it. We're going to have the Iowa Hawkeyes taking on the number 12 Penn State Nittany Lions on the road, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Not exactly the most marquee game, but certainly one to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State looked great against their win against Ohio State. Iowa is extremely worse than the preseason expectations. Iowa was assumed to be a playoff contender, but now they just completely ruined it, so I have Penn State winning.
But let's talk about the Big Ten West for a second here. And, the Big Ten West is just not that strong. If Wisconsin's your best team, then that's not very good, is it?
No, the Big Ten West really, some of the teams that weren't expected to be leading are leading now, and that's just probably coming out of the wake of Iowa being horrible this year.
Quite frankly, I had Wisconsin going, losing to Michigan State, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State. That's 4 losses. LSU. I thought they'd be 2-5, and then 3-5 after they beat Nebraska, which I didn't have the best expectations for, but very different than what I expected, Cole.
I have Iowa going undefeated in the West, and then I had Nebraska doing pretty well, Northwestern doing well, and I didn't have Wisconsin anywhere.
Yeah, and when you play LSU to open, then you get all those marquee teams. It's pretty impressive what they did, and then we have a game with Florida taking on Arkansas. Now, the reason this is important is because Tennessee has really gone downhill. You talk about a sorry division, the Big Ten, that's the Big Ten West. In the SEC, it's the SEC East.
Yeah, this is a big game for Arkansas. They might be able to turn around their program because they're not doing well at all this year.
But I have Florida winning. They've played decently. They just haven't gotten the big wins.
Except for that huge blowout against Auburn.
Yeah, when Auburn blew them out, that was probably the worst loss, right?
Yeah, by far.
And now we go to the real big games. Let's start with the Big Ten. Nebraska on the road against mighty Ohio State. Are they that mighty after losing to Penn State? Who gets the win, Cole?
I'm pulling for Nebraska. It's going to be close. It's in the horseshoe. I don't know if Ohio State has fully recovered from that Penn State game, so I'm going for Nebraska.
I've actually got Nebraska, and you had that incredible pick for that Penn State game. I never believed you. I thought that was a biased pick, but I mean, I've got to go with Nebraska. I think they've got the firepower. They did a pretty good job against Wisconsin. A good defense, and I think their offense does a little bit better against Ohio State because Ohio State, although they're 7-1, they're not a huge powerhouse.
The key to beating Ohio State is the quarterback rush. I think that's what Penn State did amazingly, and that's what helped them to get the victory.
Absolutely. You've got to get JT Barrett on the ground. And Wisconsin did a pretty good job, but sometimes he just got loose. If you can get JT Barrett on the ground, then you've got a pretty good chance of winning. And, Northwestern almost beat Ohio State. So, in reality, Ohio State, they sound like a powerhouse. They've been a powerhouse this year. Not really.
Yeah, I expect them to fall pretty well in the rankings these next weeks.
And then I expect Nebraska to win out and go to the Big Ten Championship.
I have in the Big Ten Championship Nebraska for the West and Michigan for the East.
Now we know if, of course, Nebraska loses here on Saturday night, then we should have Wisconsin in there.
But if Nebraska can manage to win this and the rest of their games, it's them going.
Absolutely. And now for a big, and I mean a big-time game in the SEC. Number 1 Alabama heading into Death Valley. Rated the number 1 stadium in all of college football by many reports. And this is not an easy place to play. It's hot. It's humid. This is real SEC football. Does Alabama pass the test?
I think the stadium aspect helps LSU greatly. I have a very close game and LSU coming on top with some sort of miracle.
I've got Alabama, and here's the thing. They play Auburn and they play LSU. Those are the 2 games they can lose, right?
Yeah, Auburn and LSU.
Now, I think they come out on top, but here's the key. You've got to stop Leonard Fournette. Make LSU throw the ball. They're not very good when they're forced to throw the ball, but when they can run, they'll beat you. And Alabama's very strong on that defensive front. You must control the line of scrimmage, win the battle in the trenches, just like with Ohio State, if you want to beat them. I think LSU makes it a close game, but I've got Alabama. I don't think they can lose until they prove they can or get really close. And, I think Auburn is certainly a challenge, even though Alabama's at home. Auburn has firepower now, not just on the defensive side of the ball, but also on the offensive side of the ball. But if LSU won, I wouldn't be that surprised. I would be somewhat surprised, but I wouldn't be that surprised.
Yeah, I think the best chance of Alabama losing is the Auburn game.
Yeah. Even though Alabama's at home, Bryant-Denny, I still think Auburn is the most complete team they're going to face. And now let's just take a look at the NFL games to wrap this up. And let's see what we have here. We have let's see. Let's talk Colts at Packers. That looked like a good one before, not so much now. And, at the beginning of the season, I thought that would be pretty good. What about you, Cole?
Yeah, I thought the Packers would go really well this season. They're not quite meeting expectations. I think the Packers will still be able to win against the mediocre Colts.
I think Lambeau Field, I agree, and I think Lambeau Field is a great element. It's hard to play there. It's cold, but, the fans are crazy there. It's going to be incredible. See a lot of cheeseheads. And now let's do the Broncos taking on the Raiders. And in this game, this is actually a pretty interesting game you have here. You've got a terrible, and I mean a terrible defense in Oakland, 31st worst, which means only one team has a worse defense. But meanwhile, the Denver offense just not able to get the job done. Who do you have?
I have the Broncos. I mean, they're coming off a Super Bowl win. They have confidence. I think they could rip through the Raiders' defense easily.
I think so too, and I think that Denver defense will hold Oakland enough so that Trevor Siemian and company can get the job done. And now, who thought we were going to have a decent game on Monday Night Football? We have the Bills taking on the Seahawks. Now, this isn't the best game, but let's take a look at what we have here. Bills are great rushing the ball. They're not that great anywhere else. Meanwhile, the Seahawks are great on defense, not that great anywhere else. Who wins? This is in Seattle.
I have the Seahawks pulling it off. Pretty close, but again, Seahawks will win.
And, I think, with the Bills, they're used to the snow, but it's going to be raining in Seattle. Seahawks win. And that's going to do it for us tonight on this beautiful Thursday night. We hope you enjoy your night of college football and NFL action. And join us tomorrow night for our next podcast on the Friday night games and some more analysis of the Saturday college football games. And then once again on Sunday, Cole and I will be there. We're going to recap all the Saturday games and give you picks for every single NFL game of the week, including Monday Night Football, which we just gave a pick for. But if you do not remember that, please make sure to see us there. And from the studio, I'm Alexander Cook along with Cole Wolfgang. Be sure to follow us at the Football Kids. That's at the Football Kids. Every follow means the world to us. And even more than follows, it's subscriptions to our YouTube channel. It's free to subscribe, as with most channels, if not every channel. And we really want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get all of our latest podcasts sent straight to your dashboard. And we ask you to leave comments on any suggestions you have for our show and how well we're doing. So just thank you for watching. Thank you for for following us on Twitter. Thank you for subscribing. We don't have a single subscriber yet. So would you like that crown jewel gift of being the first subscriber? Once again, I'm Alexander Cook along with Cole Wolfgang, and have a great night.